good fairy tale. None of it might be true, but we just love the way it sparks our wildest imagination. And lucky for us, we get to hear fairy tales every day coming out of this White House. And they all star the character Joe Biden.
And so I was sort of raised in the Puerto Rican community at home.
I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact.
I probably went to shul more than many of you did.
I used to drive a tractor trailer.
I became a professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
And when you're a black Puerto Rican truck driving Jewish professor, as you can imagine, every day is an eventful one. Some days you're fighting off your arch nemesis.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. So he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, "Hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off." Well, he came off, and he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, "You walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, 'You may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head.'"
Other days, you're battling house fires. Joe brought that up again today.
Lightning struck a little pond behind my house, came up through the ground into the air conditioning system, ended up generating thick black smoke, literally that of those proportions. And from the basement to the third floor, the attic, everything was ruined. And the kitchen floor, we almost lost a couple firefighters, they tell me, because the kitchen floor was the burning between the beams in the house, in addition to almost collapsed into the basement.
Actually, the Associated Press reports that it was a small fire that was contained to the kitchen, and it was put out in 20 minutes. But truth doesn't matter when you're telling fairy tales, but it matters when you're the president, doesn't it? And Joe's fictional life has finally caught the attention of the New York Times. They're saying Biden has been unable to break himself off the habit of embellishing narratives to weave a political identity. Otherwise, he's a liar. And that his folksiness can veer into folklore with dates that don't quite add up and details that are exaggerated or wrong. But the New York Times isn't too concerned by any of it. They say people have decided these lies don't really matter. These are just the kind of lies that people's grandfathers tell. So Joe's been lying like a grandfather since his 30s? And does your grandfather lie like that? My grandfather didn't. Maybe the fish he caught was like really this big, but he didn't just make stuff up, because my grandmother would never let him get away with that. Joe's been lying about who he is his whole life. Like when he says he graduated top of his class.
I have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. In the first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
And back in the day, even Democrats couldn't get away with telling lies like that.
Now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in the class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School.
And when Joe didn't have a whole life story to make up, he just stole it from somebody. Like when he plagiarized British Labour leader Neil Kinnock's entire story.
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family, in 1,000 generations, to be able to get the university?
They didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
Guess Joe figured out the UK was far enough away for no one to notice. And let's just say he wasn't too happy when he got caught.
Quite frankly, I think there's you'll all be the judge and the people will be the judge. I think there's much ado about nothing. The notion that every thought or notion or idea you'd have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The point is, Biden's never had an original thought in his whole life. If Biden had to use footnotes, he'd never finish. Also, do you guys know that Joe Biden's been shot at?
Let's start telling the truth. Number one, you take all the truths out,
you better have helicopters ready to take those 3,000 civilians inside the green zone where I've been 7 times and shot at. You better make sure you have protection for them or let them die.
Joe Biden was never shot at. I mean, we could do the whole hour on this. We just don't have time. Why does Joe Biden do this? How insecure do you have to be to lie about who you are? Why can't Joe Biden just be Joe Biden? The answer is this, that Joe Biden feels that Joe Biden is inadequate. But what does that mean for the country? To have a president who's an insecure liar with a chip on his shoulder? I'd like to expound on that, but I'm not a psychologist.